My grandfather was a collector of things other people threw away. He spent his weekends at estate sales and flea markets, hunting for old cameras, leather-bound journals, and stacks of old photographs. He called them frozen moments. When he passed away last summer, he left me his favorite thing, a vintage Polaroid camera and a thick, velvet-covered album filled with photos he'd taken over the last 40 years. I spent the first week just flipping through them. There were pictures of old trains, blurred shots of the seaside, and portraits of people who had long since been forgotten. But as I got to the middle of the album, I noticed a pattern. In almost every photo, whether it was a picture of a park in 1974 or a birthday party in 1988, there was a man in the background. He was always far away, a blur in the crowd, a silhouette under a street lamp. But he was always there, standing perfectly still, staring directly at the camera. And he was smiling. Not a happy smile, but a wide, frozen grin that reached his ears. I thought it was a joke. Maybe my grandfather had a weird obsession with following a specific person. Or maybe it was some kind of artistic project. Then I found the last page of the album. There was one photo dated from 3 days before my grandfather died. It was a picture of his own bedroom. The bed was empty, the curtains were drawn, and the room was dim. But in the mirror on the wardrobe, the reflection showed the room's door wide open. And standing in the doorway was the smiling man. He wasn't a blur anymore, he was clear. He was wearing a suit that looked like it belonged in the 1920s, and that grin was practically glowing in the dim light. He was looking at the camera, at my grandfather, with an expression of pure, hungry anticipation. I laughed it off. Old people get eccentric. Maybe my grandfather had a prankster friend. I put the album away and went to sleep. But that night, I woke up at 3 a.m. The house was silent, but I felt a sudden, crushing sense of being watched. I rolled over and looked at the bedroom door. It was closed, locked. Then I heard a sound. Click. It was the distinct sound of a Polaroid camera taking a photo. The sound came from the corner of my room, right where the shadows were deepest. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, slowly, a white square of film slid out from the darkness, gliding across the floor toward my bed. I reached down, my hand shaking, and picked up the photo. As the chemicals developed and the image faded into view, my heart stopped. The photo was of me, sleeping, taken from the foot of my bed, and standing right behind me, leaning over my shoulder, was the man. He wasn't a blur. He wasn't a reflection. He was inches from my face, his wide, frozen grin filling the frame. But the terrifying part wasn't the man. The terrifying part was that in the photo he was holding something. He was holding a Polaroid camera, and he was pointing it directly at the mirror. I slowly turned my head to look at the mirror on my wall. The room was empty, but in the reflection, the smiling man was standing right behind me, his finger on the shutter. He didn't say a word. He just leaned in and whispered, "Smile for the collection."
I've worked as a night receptionist at the Grand Sterling Hotel for 10 years. It's a fancy place. Gold leaf on the ceilings, velvet carpets, and an elevator that looks like a jewelry box. The Sterling has 12 floors. 12 floors of luxury suites, ballrooms, and dining halls. But the elevator has a button that shouldn't exist. It's tucked behind a small brass plate, barely visible. If you press the 12, and they are simultaneously and hold them for 5 seconds. The panel shifts. The 13th button appears. No number, just a blank, silver disc. The rule among the staff is simple. Never press the blank button. For years, I followed that rule. I watched new hires try it, only for them to come back 5 minutes later looking pale, claiming the elevator just stuttered and opened into a hallway that looked exactly like the lobby. But empty. Last Tuesday, curiosity finally won. It was 3 a.m., the lobby was dead, and the night manager was asleep in the lounge. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the sequence, and hit the blank button. The elevator didn't move. Not at first. Then, I felt a sudden drop in pressure, like when a plane hits a pocket of air. The lights flickered, and the elevator began to rise. Slowly, too slowly. When the doors finally opened, I wasn't in a hotel. I was in a version of the hotel that had been stripped of its soul. The walls were a sterile, pulsating gray. The carpet was gone, replaced by a cold, metallic floor. And the silence, it wasn't just quiet. It was a heavy, pressing silence that felt like it was trying to push the air out of my lungs. I stepped out into the hallway. Everything was familiar, but skewed. The doors were too tall. The ceiling was too high, and every single door was open. As I walked, I noticed something strange. In every room, there was a person. They weren't ghosts. They weren't monsters. They were me. In the first room, there was a version of me wearing a different suit, sitting at a desk, staring at a blank wall. In the second room, a version of me was standing in the corner, facing the wall, perfectly still. In the third, a version of me was lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling with wide, vacant eyes. Dozens of me, all trapped in a loop of a single, frozen moment. I felt a surge of panic and sprinted back to the elevator. I slammed the lobby button, desperate to get back to the world where I was the only version of myself. The doors closed. The elevator descended. When the doors opened back in the lobby, everything looked normal. The gold leaf was there. The velvet was there. The night manager was waking up from his nap. I sighed with relief and started to walk toward the desk. But then I stopped. The night manager was looking at me, not with a smile, but with a look of absolute horror. "Who are you?" he whispered. I looked down at my hands. They were pale. My skin felt cold like marble. I looked at the reflection in the gold leaf mirror of the lobby. I wasn't wearing my uniform. I was wearing a suit from a world of sterile gray. And as I opened my mouth to answer, no sound came out, because I realized with a sudden, crushing clarity that the elevator hadn't brought me back to the lobby. It had just swapped the versions. And as I looked toward the elevator, the doors, in my village, we have one rule for when the fog rolls in. Never answer the door if you hear 3 knocks. It sounds like a superstition, a story told to children to keep them in bed. But in this valley, the fog doesn't just hide the road. It brings things that aren't quite finished. The mimics. They don't have their own voices. They don't have their own faces. They just have a hunger for a life they can never own. They find a house, they listen to the people inside, and they spend hours, days, perfecting the sound of a loved one's voice. But they have a flaw. They can't mimic the rhythm of a human heart. They can only mimic the sounds they hear. 3 years ago, my sister, Elena, moved into the house on the cliff. She was a city girl. She laughed at our warnings. "It's the 21st century," she told me. "Nobody is knocking on doors in the middle of a fog storm." Then came the November fog, the kind that swallows the sun by noon and turns the world into a wall of white. On the third night, Elena called me. She sounded shaken. "There's someone at the door," she whispered. He sounds exactly like our father. He's calling my name. He's asking to be let in because he's cold." "Don't open it," I told her. "Listen to the knocks." "How many were there?" "2," she replied. "He knocked twice. Then he stopped. He's just waiting. Wait for the third." I warned. If there is a third knock and it comes from the same spot, it's a mimic. They always knock in threes to signal they found a way in. For an hour, there was silence. Elena stayed on the phone, her breathing ragged. Then the silence broke. Knock, Elena gasped. Knock. The voice outside changed. It wasn't our father anymore. It was my voice. It sounded exactly like me. The same inflection, the same warmth. Elena, the thing outside whispered. It's me. I've come to bring you home. Please just open the door. It's so cold out here. Elena started to cry. But you're on the phone with me. The thing outside paused. Then it spoke in a voice that wasn't mine and wasn't our father's. It was a distorted, grinding sound, like two stones rubbing together. I know, it hissed. I just wanted you to hear how well I can do it. Then the third knock happened, but it didn't come from the front door. Knock came from the bedroom window, right behind her.